Money talks, but wealth whispers unless you are forced to scream. A black woman in a faded Yale hoodie was told by a smirking flight attendant that her first-class ticket was invalid. She was escorted to economy, treated like a trespasser, and threatened with airport security. Moments later, that same flight attendant, the senior purser, and the captain stood on the tarmac, completely unemployed. This is how a billionaire cleans house. The ink on the $4.2 billion acquisition had barely dried in a glass-walled boardroom in Mayfair, London. Naomi Croft had not slept in days. At 34, she was the sole founder and CEO of Omnicorp Logistics, a global supply chain titan that had just aggressively bought out Horizon Aviation, a struggling parent company that owned several boutique luxury airlines and a fleet of private charters. Her entire body ached with that specific hollow exhaustion that only comes from corporate warfare. Her legal team had popped champagne. Naomi had asked for a black coffee and a ride to Heathrow. All she wanted was to board her flight to New York, recline the flatbed in seat 1A, and sleep for the entire crossing of the Atlantic. She arrived at Heathrow's Terminal 5, looking nothing like a woman who had just swallowed a global aviation firm. She wore a faded navy blue Yale hoodie, a relic from her scholarship days, black Lululemon leggings, and a pair of spotless white sneakers. Her natural hair was pulled up into a messy bun. She carried no purse, only a scuffed leather briefcase that held the master contracts and a custom unmarked black leather duffel bag. She bypassed the chaotic main concourse and walked toward the discreet, frosted glass entrance of the Horizon first-class pavilion. This was not just a lounge. It was an exclusive sanctuary reserved for royalty, A-list celebrities, and ultra-high net worth individuals. As Naomi pushed through the sliding glass doors, the noise of the airport vanished, replaced by the soft hum of classical music and the scent of white tea and mahogany. A pristine concierge desk sat at the front, flanked by two towering arrangements of fresh white orchids. Behind the desk stood a young man named Jasper, his hair slicked back, wearing a perfectly tailored Horizon Aviation uniform. As Naomi approached, Jasper's professional smile faltered. His eyes quickly scanned her hoodie, her leggings, and her lack of designer luggage. The micro-calculation was instantaneous. He saw a young black woman in athleisure, and his brain immediately categorized her as lost. "Excuse me, miss," Jasper said, his voice dripping with that specific brand of polite British condescension. "I believe you've taken a wrong turn. The main terminal for economy check-in is back through the glass doors and to your left." Naomi did not blink. She had spent the last decade navigating boardrooms filled with older men who underestimated her. A concierge at an airport was barely a blip on her radar. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her sleek black Horizon first-class boarding pass, and placed it on the marble counter alongside her dark blue passport. "I am checking in for Flight 001 to JFK, Seat 1A, Naomi said, her voice completely flat, devoid of both anger and warmth. Jasper looked at the boarding pass, then at the passport, and then back at Naomi. A slight flush crept up his neck. He typed something into his computer, the mechanical clacking echoing in the quiet foyer. "My apologies, Miss Croft," Jasper said, though his tone suggested it was an inconvenience rather than a genuine mistake. "You understand we rarely see first-class passengers dressed so comfortably. Proceed to the lounge. Your flight will board soon." Naomi took her documents without another word. She did not care about Jasper. She cared about a bed. Inside the lounge, the atmosphere was hushed. Wealthy businessmen in bespoke suits sipped espresso and read the Financial Times. A famous actress sat in a corner booth hiding behind oversized sunglasses. Naomi found a quiet, dimly lit pod near the back, plugged in her phone, and closed her eyes. She just needed to survive until boarding. She did not know that the hostility at the front desk was only the appetizer. The real problem was brewing at the gate. While Naomi rested, a catastrophic glitch had occurred in the Horizon reservation system, or rather, a human-engineered glitch. The system had flagged a double booking for Seat 1A. It was a lie, of course. Seat 1A was Naomi's. She had booked it months earlier, but a very important, very loud passenger had just arrived at the airport without a reservation demanding a first-class suite. That passenger was Sterling Blackwell, a billionaire hedge fund manager whose firm had previously invested heavily in Horizon Aviation. Sterling was notorious for throwing tantrums that cost people their jobs. At the gate, Elise, the senior gate agent, was panicking. "Sterling Blackwell is at the desk," Elise whispered frantically into the phone to the senior purser, Vivian. "He wants 1A. He always flies in 1A. Vivian, a 20-year veteran of the airline who prided herself on catering to the elite, did not hesitate. "Who is currently in 1A? Elise checked her screen. "A Naomi Croft." "Who?" "Nobody I recognize. No corporate account attached. No VIP status tags. Just a standard, first-class booking." "Bump her," Vivian ordered coldly. "Tell her there was an equipment change or a system error. Downgrade her to business or economy, if business is full. I'm not having Sterling Blackwell scream at me for 7 hours because some nobody is sitting in his seat." "Are you sure?" Elise asked. "Downgrading a first-class passenger without notice violates the Passenger Bill of Rights." "I don't care about the Bill of Rights, Elise. I care about my pension. Blackwell is a friend of the board. Move the Croft woman. If she complains, offer her a voucher." The decision was made in less than a minute. A swift, brutal reassignment of status based on a name they did not recognize. They had no idea that the board Sterling Blackwell was supposedly friends with no longer existed. They had no idea that the woman they were bumping had just hours earlier become the supreme ruler of their entire corporate universe. When the boarding announcement for Flight 001 chimed through the first-class pavilion, Naomi gathered her briefcase and duffel, her muscles heavy with fatigue. She walked down the private jet bridge reserved for premium passengers, the anticipation of the lie-flat bed keeping her moving. When she reached the end of the corridor, she handed her boarding pass to Elise. Elise scanned the barcode. A loud, sharp beep echoed, and the screen flashed red. Elise looked up, her expression immediately hardening into a mask of practiced corporate sympathy. "Ms. Croft, I'm afraid there has been a complication with your seat." Naomi stopped. "A complication?" "Yes," Elise said smoothly, stepping out from behind the podium. "Due to a last-minute equipment change and a system error, your seat 1A is no longer available. We have had to reassign you." Naomi frowned. She knew the fleet. She knew the logistics. Flight 001 is a Boeing 777-300ER. Horizon only operates 3 of them, and none of them have alternate seating configurations. There is no equipment change. Elise blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the passenger's technical knowledge, but she quickly recovered. "Be that as it may, the seat is unavailable. We have secured you a seat in our premium economy cabin, and we will of course offer you a travel voucher for the inconvenience." "Premium economy?" Naomi's voice dropped an octave, becoming dangerously quiet. "I paid $12,000 for a first-class suite. I am not flying premium economy." "I'm afraid you don't have a choice," said a new voice. Vivian, the senior purser, stepped off the aircraft and onto the jet bridge. She was a tall woman with impeccably sprayed blonde hair and a sharp, authoritative face. She looked Naomi up and down, her eyes lingering on the faded Yale hoodie. Vivian's lips pursed in disdain. She had dealt with entitled upgrades before. "I am the senior purser on this flight," Vivian announced. "The gate agent has explained the situation. Seat 1A is occupied by a VIP passenger. You will either accept the reassignment, or you will be removed from the passenger manifest entirely." Before Naomi could respond, heavy footsteps echoed down the jet bridge. Sterling Blackwell stormed past, flanked by 2 assistants. He was practically shouting into his cell phone. "I told them to short the stock. Absolute idiots," Sterling barked, his face red. He paused right next to Naomi, barely glancing at her, and snapped his fingers at Vivian. "Vivian, darling, tell me my suite is ready. I need a double scotch before wheels up." "Of course, Mr. Blackwell," Vivian fawned, her entire demeanor transforming into sycophantic warmth. "Seat 1A is pristine and waiting for you. Let me escort you." Naomi watched this exchange with a chilling sense of clarity. The fog of exhaustion lifted, replaced by a razor-sharp crystalline focus. She looked at Sterling Blackwell. She knew him. 3 years earlier, his hedge fund had tried to aggressively short Omnicorp Logistics, attempting to bankrupt her company. Naomi had orchestrated a counterplay so devastating it had cost his fund $500 million. Sterling did not recognize her right now. To him, she was just an invisible person in his way. "You bumped me for him," Naomi stated, turning her gaze back to Elise and Vivian. "You didn't have a system error. You deliberately canceled my ticket to accommodate a man who didn't have a reservation." Vivian's smile vanished. "Ms. Croft, lower your voice. Mr. Blackwell is a highly valued corporate partner of Horizon Aviation." "And what am I?" Naomi asked softly. "You are currently causing a disturbance," Vivian said, her tone dripping with venom. "Now you have 2 choices. You can walk down that aisle, take seat 34J in premium economy, and be grateful we are accommodating you at all, or I will call airport security and have you escorted out of the terminal. Which is it?" Naomi looked at Vivian. She looked at Elise. She looked at the airplane door. In her briefcase were the legal documents proving she owned the literal metal tube they were standing in. She could pull them out. She could drop the hammer right there on the jet bridge. But Naomi Croft was a tactician. She knew that true power was not just about destroying your enemies. It was about exposing their rot completely before you burned it to the ground. She wanted to see exactly how deep this arrogance went. She wanted to know exactly what kind of culture had infected the company she had just bought. "Fine," Naomi said quietly. "Take me to 34J. Vivian sneered triumphantly. "I thought you might see reason. Follow me." Walking on to a luxury aircraft as a demoted passenger is an exercise in public humiliation. Vivian did not just point Naomi to the back. She actively escorted her, making a show of it. They walked through the first-class cabin. The suites were opulent, enclosed by sliding mahogany doors. Naomi walked past seat 1A. Sterling Blackwell was already sprawled out, his shoes off, barking at a junior flight attendant to pour his scotch faster. They moved through business class and finally into the cramped, densely packed premium economy section. The air felt different here, stale, heavy with the collective stress of 300 passengers fighting for overhead bin space. "Seat 34J. Vivian pointed to a middle seat sandwiched between a crying toddler and a man aggressively eating a tuna sandwich. "Have a pleasant flight, Ms. Croft." Vivian turned on her heel and began marching back toward the front of the plane. Naomi stood in the aisle. The noise of the cabin swirled around her. The baby wailed. The smell of tuna permeated the air. She looked at the middle seat. She had worked 70-hour weeks for 10 years. She had built a logistics empire from a laptop in a damp basement in South London. She had just spent $4.2 billion to acquire this airline. "No," Naomi thought. "I don't think I will sit in 34J. Naomi turned around and walked straight back up the aisle. She bypassed the curtain separating economy from business. A flight attendant tried to stop her. "Miss, you can't be up here." Naomi ignored him. She pushed through the next curtain, stepping back into the hushed, expansive luxury of the first-class cabin. Vivian was standing near the galley pouring champagne. When she saw Naomi standing in the aisle, her face contorted in absolute fury. "What do you think you are doing?" Vivian hissed, slamming the champagne bottle onto the counter. "Get back to your seat immediately." "I am going to my seat," Naomi said, her voice carrying through the quiet cabin. She stopped right outside Suite 1A. Sterling Blackwell looked up from his iPad, his face scrunching in annoyance. "What is the meaning of this, Vivian? Why is this woman loitering near my suite?" "I am handling it, Mr. Blackwell. I am so sorry." Vivian stammered before turning a vicious glare on Naomi. "You have crossed a line. You are now interfering with a flight. I am calling the captain." Vivian picked up the interphone and aggressively punched a button. Less than 10 seconds later, the reinforced cockpit door clicked open. Captain Harlan stepped out. He was a man in his late 50s, sporting a pristine white uniform with 4 gold stripes on his epaulets. He had the arrogant posture of a man who is used to absolute authority. "What seems to be the problem here, Vivian?" Captain Harlan asked, his booming voice designed to intimidate. "This passenger," Vivian pointed a finger at Naomi, "was downgraded due to an operational necessity. She is refusing to sit in her assigned economy seat and is harassing our VIP passenger in 1A. Captain Harlan puffed out his chest and stepped uncomfortably close to Naomi, trying to use his height to tower over her. "Listen to me very carefully, young lady," the captain said, his voice a low, threatening rumble. "I am the master of this vessel. My word is federal law. You are currently committing a felony by disobeying my flight crew. If you do not turn around and march your behind back to economy this very second, I will call the port authority. They will drag you off my aircraft in handcuffs, and I will personally see to it that you are placed on a permanent no-fly list. Do we understand each other?" Naomi did not step back. She did not flinch. She simply tilted her left wrist and looked at her watch. A slim, understated Cartier tank. The airport noise, the hum of the aircraft engines, the arrogant sneer on the captain's face, the smug satisfaction radiating from Vivian. It all seemed to freeze in time. Naomi reached into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out her phone. "Who do you think you're calling?" Captain Harlan barked. "Put that away. I am ordering you off this plane." "Donovan," Naomi said, ignoring the captain completely as she brought the phone to her ear. The call had connected on the first ring. Donovan was Naomi's chief operating officer. He was currently sitting in the Mayfair boardroom they had vacated hours earlier, finalizing the press releases for the morning markets. "Naomi," Donovan's voice was sharp and alert. "Are you in the air? You should be sleeping." "I'm at the gate for Flight 001, Naomi said, her voice eerily calm, projecting clearly into the silent first-class cabin. "We have a structural management issue. I need you to initiate Protocol 0 on the Horizon Aviation roster." In the boardroom miles away, Donovan sat up straight. Protocol 0 meant immediate sweeping termination with extreme prejudice. "Protocol 0? Donovan asked, shocked. "Naomi, the ink is barely dry. The market doesn't even know we own them yet. Who are we terminating?" "Start with the gate agent, Elise, then the senior purser on Flight 001, Vivian, and finally the captain of Flight 001, Harlan." Captain Harlan let out a loud, incredulous laugh. "What kind of delusional performance is this? Are you pretending to fire me? I work for Horizon Aviation, little girl. You are a raving lunatic." Sterling Blackwell chuckled from his seat. "Just call security, Harlan. The woman is clearly having a psychotic break." Naomi lowered the phone slightly, locking eyes with the captain. The dead, absolute certainty in her gaze finally caused the man's smile to falter. A tiny, irrational sliver of doubt pierced his arrogance. "Donovan," Naomi continued into the phone, never breaking eye contact with the captain. "Call the Heathrow Tower. Ground this aircraft. Revoke the flight plan. Revoke their security clearances. Freeze their corporate credentials, their pensions, and their severance packages pending a full legal review for discriminatory practices." "Done," Donovan said. "Give me a few minutes to route this through the Civil Aviation Authority and the Horizon Board." Naomi hung up the phone and slipped it back into her pocket. She looked at Vivian, whose face had gone slightly pale, though she was still fighting to maintain her sneer. She looked at Captain Harlan, who was now clenching his jaw in anger. "You don't work for Horizon Aviation anymore." "Harlan," Naomi said, her voice echoing like a gavel in the quiet cabin. "Because as of this morning, Horizon Aviation belongs to me. I am your CEO, and you have a few minutes to pack your bags and get off my airplane." The silence that followed Naomi's declaration was so absolute, you could hear the subtle hum of the Boeing 777's auxiliary power unit vibrating through the floorboards. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then Captain Harlan let out a loud, booming laugh that shattered the tension. It was a practiced theatrical laugh designed to belittle. "CEO of Horizon," Harlan scoffed, his face flushing with a mix of amusement and raw indignation. "Do you honestly expect me to believe that the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar aviation conglomerate is standing in my galley wearing gym clothes? You are out of your mind. Vivian, page the ground security team immediately. I want this woman in handcuffs before I finish my pre-flight checklist." "Right away, Captain," Vivian agreed, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for the intercom panel. Her smugness had returned, bolstered by the captain's authority, but there was a new, frantic energy to her movements. She punched the button to connect to the gate desk. Elise, we need port authority on the aircraft immediately. We have a hostile passenger refusing to disembark." Naomi did not flinch. She simply took 2 steps back away from the galley and calmly sat down in Suite 1B, the empty seat directly across the aisle from Sterling Blackwell. She crossed her legs, rested her hands in her lap, and waited. Sterling, who had been watching the exchange with mild annoyance, finally put down his crystal tumbler of scotch. He leaned forward, his custom-tailored Tom Ford suit crinkling. "Look, whoever you are," Sterling sneered, pointing a thick finger at Naomi. "I don't know what kind of social media stunt this is, or if you're just off your medication, but you are delaying my flight. Time is money, and my time is worth exponentially more than yours." Naomi turned her head slowly to look at the hedge fund billionaire. "Is it, Sterling?" she asked softly. "Because 3 years ago, when you tried to aggressively short Omnicorp Logistics, you lost $500 million of your client's money in 48 hours. From where I'm sitting, your time seems to be incredibly unprofitable." Sterling's face froze. The blood drained from his cheeks, leaving him looking suddenly old and hollow. The color of his skin shifted to an ashen gray. He stared at the black woman in the faded Yale hoodie. He looked at her sharp, unyielding eyes, and then the realization hit him like a physical blow to the chest. He had not recognized her because he had never met her in person. Their previous war had been fought entirely through proxy boards, aggressive press releases, and merciless stock manipulation. But he knew the name: Naomi Croft. "You," Sterling stammered, his voice losing all its bluster. "You're Croft. You're the Omnicorp founder." "I am," Naomi said simply. "What does Omnicorp have to do with Horizon Aviation?" Sterling demanded, though a distinct tremor had entered his voice. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, his hands suddenly clumsy. "Horizon is a private entity. Prescott operates this airline. I play golf with Prescott every Tuesday." "Call him," Naomi offered coldly. "Ask Prescott how his morning is going." Captain Harlan watched this exchange with growing unease. The absolute terrified shift in the billionaire's demeanor was impossible to ignore. Sterling Blackwell did not get scared, but right now Sterling's hands were shaking as he dialed a number and pressed the phone to his ear. "Come on, Prescott, pick up," Sterling muttered frantically. In the galley, Vivian was hitting the intercom button repeatedly. Elise, why aren't you answering? Pick up the line." "She can't," Naomi said without looking at the purser. "Her terminal is already dead." Just as the words left Naomi's mouth, rapid footsteps echoed down the jet bridge. Elise, the gate agent, practically tripped as she sprinted onto the aircraft. Her face was chalk white, her eyes wide with unadulterated panic. She was not holding a boarding scanner. She was clutching her Horizon-issued tablet to her chest like a shield. "Captain," Elise gasped, out of breath, completely ignoring Vivian. "Captain, Something is wrong. The entire gate system just went black. Harlan frowned, stepping forward. What do you mean black? Did the server crash? Quality. No, you don't understand. Elise's voice cracked, bordering on hysterical. It didn't crash. A red banner locked down my screen. It said, Authorization revoked, Protocol 0, and then my employee badge. It beeped. The magnetic lock on the jetbridge door wouldn't open for me. I had to force the emergency override to get on the plane. A heavy, suffocating silence descended over the first-class cabin. Captain Harlan's jaw tightened. Protocol 0. That's a total corporate liquidation code. That hasn't been used since Horizon absorbed Blue Sky Airways a decade ago. He turned his glare back to Naomi, but the absolute confidence in his eyes was gone, replaced by a flickering, desperate doubt. What have you done? Before Naomi could answer, the heavy reinforced cockpit door swung open. Tristan, the 32-year-old first officer, stepped out. He looked entirely bewildered, holding an iPad that was actively flashing with breaking news alerts. Harlan, Tristan said, his voice tense. You need to look at this. Not now, Tristan, Harlan snapped, his temper fraying. We have a security situation in the cabin. Harlan, listen to me. Tristan raised his voice, a profound breach of cockpit etiquette, but it finally made the captain stop. Tristan turned the iPad around so the older man could see the screen. It was the Bloomberg Finance homepage. A massive, bold headline dominated the screen. Omnicorp Logistics executes hostile $4.2 billion takeover of Horizon Aviation. Naomi Croft named sole CEO. The article had just gone live globally. Captain Harlan stared at the screen. His eyes darted across the headline, reading it once, twice, 3 times. The iPad slipped slightly in Tristan's hands, but Harlan did not seem to notice. All the air seemed to leave his lungs at once. Behind them, Sterling's phone finally connected. The billionaire put it on speaker out of sheer shock. Prescott! Sterling practically yelled. Prescott, what the hell is happening? I'm on flight 001 and there's a woman here claiming… Sterling, Prescott's voice echoed from the phone. The former CEO sounded utterly defeated, exhausted, and remarkably small. If you're on a Horizon plane right now, you need to keep your head down. It's gone, Sterling. The board folded this morning. Omnicorp bought our debt, leveraged the European assets, and forced a complete buyout. Naomi Croft owns every single nut, bolt, and rivet of this company. Sterling slowly lowered the phone. The call disconnected with a hollow click. Vivienne, who had been listening to the entire exchange, backed up until her spine hit the galley counter. The aggressive, sneering senior purser was gone. Her impeccably sprayed hair suddenly looked brittle. Her posture collapsed. She looked at Naomi, her eyes welling with terrified tears. Miss Croft, Vivienne whispered, her voice shaking violently. Please, I didn't know. I have 20 years with this airline. I have a mortgage. Please, it was a misunderstanding. I was just following VIP protocols for Mr. Blackwell. Naomi finally stood up. The relaxed posture was gone. She stood to her full height, radiating an icy, untouchable authority that commanded the entire cabin. You didn't make a mistake, Vivienne, Naomi said, her voice lethal and calm. A mistake is dropping a glass. A mistake is forgetting a passenger's meal. What you did was execute a calculated, discriminatory power play. You looked at a black woman in a hoodie, decided she was beneath your respect, and humiliated her to curry favor with a man who wasn't even booked on this flight. You didn't follow protocol. You actively broke the law to serve your own arrogance. Naomi turned her gaze to Captain Harlan. The man was still staring at the iPad, paralyzed. And you, Captain? Naomi's voice cut through the air like a whip. You threatened me with federal charges. You attempted to use your authority not to protect your aircraft, but to bully a paying passenger to protect your purser's ego. You are exactly the kind of rot I am carving out of this company." Naomi looked at Tristan. "Tristan, are your credentials still active?" Tristan quickly checked his company tablet. "Yes, ma'am, they are." "Congratulations, Captain Tristan," Naomi said without missing a beat. "You are now in command of Flight 001. Please return to the cockpit and wait for ground clearance." Tristan swallowed hard, nodded curtly, and stepped back into the cockpit, locking the door behind him. Suddenly, the main cabin lights flickered and shut off, replaced instantly by the dim emergency backup lighting. The subtle hum of the APU died. The aircraft was suddenly very quiet and very still. The control tower had just cut their ground power. The sudden darkness and silence in the cabin shattered the last remaining illusions of safety the crew held. The reality of the situation crashed down upon them with the weight of a collapsing building. Vivian let out a sharp, choked sob, burying her face in her hands. Elise was leaning against the bulkhead, hyperventilating, her eyes darting around the cabin like a trapped animal. Captain Harlan stood perfectly rigid, his face pale, the gold stripes on his shoulders suddenly looking like a mockery of authority. "This is unlawful," Harlan whispered, his voice hoarse. He was clinging to the last shreds of his shattered ego. "You cannot terminate a flight crew on the tarmac without a union representative." "You cannot—" "I didn't terminate a union crew," Naomi interrupted seamlessly. "According to the buyout clause, all executive and senior management contracts were dissolved this morning. As a senior training captain, you are classified as management. Your union doesn't protect you anymore, Harlan. You are an at-will employee, or rather, you were." Heavy synchronized footsteps echoed down the jet bridge, far louder and more deliberate than Elise's panicked sprint. Two officers from the Metropolitan Police Airport Division stepped through the aircraft door, their high-visibility yellow jackets stark against the dim cabin lighting. They were flanked by 3 Heathrow Port Authority security agents. Leading the group was a stern-faced, broad-shouldered officer with a radio clipped to his shoulder. "Officer Brennan," the lead policeman announced himself, scanning the first-class cabin before his eyes landed on Naomi. His radio crackled with a burst of static. "Ms. Croft?" "Yes, officer," Naomi replied. "We received a priority call from Omnicorp Logistics regarding multiple unauthorized individuals on board a private vessel," Officer Brennan said, his tone entirely professional. "We were instructed that 3 individuals have had their security clearances revoked and are currently trespassing in a restricted federal aviation zone." Captain Harlan's jaw dropped. "Trespassing? I am the captain of this aircraft." Officer Brennan looked at Harlan, his expression entirely devoid of sympathy. "Sir, my dispatch shows that your Horizon aviation credentials were electronically incinerated minutes ago. Under aviation law, you are no longer licensed to be on the flight deck, nor are you authorized to be past the security checkpoints without a valid passenger ticket." "This is insane," Harlan roared, stepping toward the officer. "I have flown for this airline for 25 years. You are not walking me off my own plane." 2 Port Authority guards instantly unclipped their batons, stepping forward to block Harlan's path. "Sir, you will step back," Officer Brennan warned, his hand resting on his utility belt. "You will surrender your company ID, your terminal access card, and your flight deck keys. You will then be escorted out of the sterile area. If you resist, you will be arrested under the Aviation Security Act. Do I make myself clear?" The absolute finality in the officer's voice broke the last remnant of Harlan's defiance. The older man's shoulders sagged. His hands trembling, he reached into his breast pocket and pulled out his lanyard, tossing it onto the galley counter. He looked at Naomi, a mixture of pure hatred and utter devastation in his eyes. "You ruined my life for a seat," Harlan spat. "No," Naomi corrected softly. "I removed a liability from my fleet. You ruined your own life the moment you believed a uniform gave you the right to abuse people." Officer Brennan turned to Vivian and Elise. "Ladies, the same applies to you. Lanyards and tablets on the counter. Move. Elise immediately burst into loud, racking sobs. She ripped her badge off her neck and practically threw it at the counter, terrified of being arrested. She did not look at Naomi. She just kept apologizing to the police officers, tears streaming down her face. Vivienne moved much slower. She unclipped her senior purser badge, her hands shaking so violently she dropped it twice before finally placing it on the marble counter. She looked at Naomi one last time. There was no anger left in Vivienne, only the cold, terrifying realization of her new reality. In a matter of minutes, she had gone from the queen of the first-class cabin to an unemployed, disgraced liability. "Please," Vivienne whispered a final, pathetic plea. "I have children." "Then you should have thought about the example you were setting for them," Naomi replied, her voice completely devoid of pity. "Officer, get them off my plane." "Right this way," Officer Brennan said, gesturing toward the door. But they could not just leave quietly. The curtain separating first class from business class was suddenly pulled back. The commotion, the sudden loss of power, and the arrival of the police had drawn the attention of the passengers. Dozens of faces were peering through the gap, holding up their cell phones, recording every single second. The man with the tuna sandwich was there. The young mother with the toddler was there. They watched as the arrogant senior purser who had sneered at them during boarding was marched off the plane by armed police alongside the disgraced captain. The flash of smartphone cameras illuminated the dark cabin. It was a walk of absolute, undeniable shame. Once the crew was gone, silence fell over the first-class cabin again. Naomi turned her attention back to Sterling Blackwell. The billionaire had sunk deep into his luxurious leather seat, trying to make himself as small and unnoticeable as possible. The arrogance that had fueled his entire existence had evaporated. "Sterling," Naomi said. Sterling flinched. "Miss Croft, Naomi, listen, we got off on the wrong foot here. Obviously, there has been a massive misunderstanding. The crew was overzealous. Let's just put this behind us. I'm a major client. We can do business together." "We are not going to do business together, Sterling," Naomi said, walking over to Suite 1A and resting her hand on the mahogany privacy door. "You don't have a reservation on this flight. The crew illegally bumped a paying customer to accommodate you." "I can pay for the seat right now," Sterling said desperately, reaching for his platinum credit card. "Name the price. 10,000, so 20,000. Naomi smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile that never reached her eyes. "You don't have enough money to buy a seat on my airline, Sterling," Naomi said softly. "You are banned from Horizon Aviation. You are banned from Omnicorp Logistics Charters. You are permanently blacklisted from every subsidiary I own. If you ever try to step foot on one of my properties again, I will have you arrested for trespassing." Sterling stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. "You can't do that. I have a meeting in New York. The market's open soon." "Then I suggest you start swimming," Naomi said. She looked at the Port Authority agent standing by the door. "Remove him." "Sir." The guard stepped forward, grabbing Sterling's arm with zero gentleness. "Gather your belongings and step off the aircraft." Sterling did not fight. The billionaire was escorted out, dragging his designer luggage behind him. His head bowed as he walked past the gauntlet of recording cell phones in the business-class cabin. Naomi watched him go. Then she took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline bleed out of her system. Her bones still ached. The exhaustion was still there, heavy and demanding. She turned around and walked over to Suite 1A. It was pristine. She pressed the button to recline the massive leather seat, watching as it mechanically shifted into a fully flat, luxurious bed. She placed her custom black leather duffel bag on the floor, took off her white sneakers, and lay down on the plush mattress. She pulled the cashmere blanket over her shoulders. The intercom chimed, and Captain Tristan's voice came over the speakers, sounding slightly nervous but entirely professional. "Good morning, passengers. This is your captain speaking. We apologize for the delay. We are finalizing our new flight plan and ground power has been restored. We will be pushing back for New York JFK shortly. On behalf of Omnicorp Logistics and Horizon Aviation, we thank you for your patience, and we hope you enjoy your newly upgraded flight experience." Naomi closed her eyes. The gentle hum of the aircraft engines returned, vibrating softly beneath her. She had a $4.2 billion company to restructure tomorrow, but for the next several hours she was going to sleep. Hours later, high over the Atlantic, the cabin of Flight 001 was entirely transformed. The heavy, oppressive tension that usually accompanied luxury travel under Vivian's tyrannical reign had vanished. Naomi woke to the smell of freshly brewed espresso and warm croissants. She stretched, the exhaustion finally having retreated from her bones. When she slid open her mahogany privacy door, she found a young woman in a Horizon Aviation uniform, standing a respectful distance away. Her name, tag read Lila. Lila was 23, a junior flight attendant, who had been working in the premium economy galley only hours before. With Vivian gone, Captain Tristan had given Lila a battlefield promotion to acting purser. "Good afternoon, Ms. Croft," Lila said, her voice bright and genuinely welcoming, free from the sycophantic slime the previous crew used for billionaires. "I hope you slept well. We have a few hours until we begin our descent into JFK. Can I get you some lunch?" "Just a black coffee, please, Lila." Naomi smiled, sitting up. "And how is the cabin?" "Quiet, ma'am," Lila beamed. "Actually, it's the best flight I've ever worked. Everyone is just relaxed." Naomi nodded, taking her coffee. As Lila walked away to attend to the other passengers, Naomi booted up her laptop and connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi. It was time to look at the damage. She opened a secure encrypted channel to her chief operating officer, Donovan, back in London. Donovan's face appeared on the screen immediately. He looked tired but exhilarated. Behind him, the Omnicorp war room was a hive of activity, analysts shouting across desks and monitors flashing red and green. "Naomi," Donovan said, leaning into his webcam, "I hope you enjoyed your nap because the entire internet is currently on fire." "Show me," Naomi said calmly. Donovan shared his screen. Shortly after Flight 001 had pushed back from the gate, the cell phone footage recorded by the business-class passengers had leaked. It was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Reddit were flooded with various angles of Captain Harlan and senior purser Vivian being marched off the plane by armed police. The hashtag #Protocol0 was trending globally at #1. "The public reaction is 90% in our favor," Donovan reported, bringing up a sentiment analysis chart. "The working class loves seeing an arrogant captain and a snooty purser get frog-marched off a plane. But there is a complication." "Sterling Blackwell," Naomi guessed. "Exactly," Donovan sighed. "Sterling didn't just tuck his tail between his legs the moment he was kicked out of Heathrow. He got on the phone with his PR firm, Edelman. He's trying to spin the narrative before the markets officially price in our takeover of Horizon." Donovan pulled up an article from a prominent financial news outlet that had gone live minutes earlier. The headline read, "Billionaire Sterling Blackwell claims Omnicorp CEO suffered psychotic break during hostile takeover, unlawfully detained passengers." "Sterling's team is planting seeds that you are unstable, Naomi," Donovan warned. "He's claiming you threw a temper tantrum because you didn't like the service and endangered a flight by firing the pilot, and that Omnicorp is too erratic to trust. Horizon's legacy shareholders are getting jittery. We're seeing a slight dip in our stock price." Naomi took a sip of her black coffee. She did not look angry. She looked amused. Sterling was playing checkers while she was playing three-dimensional chess. "Sterling is a cornered rat," Naomi said. "He thinks he can use his media contacts to bury me because that's how he survived for 20 years. But he forgot one very important detail about Horizon's Boeing 767 fleet." Donovan frowned. "What detail?" "Horizon installed an automated cloud-synced cabin intercom data system, CIDS, years ago to monitor crew disputes," Naomi explained, her fingers already flying across her keyboard, digging into the master servers she now owned. Every intercom call between the gate, the galley, and the cockpit, is recorded and beamed directly to the airline's mainframe in real time. Naomi found the master file for Flight 001. She isolated the audio tracks from the critical window. "Donovan, I am sending you a compressed audio file," Naomi instructed. "It contains the direct communication between gate agent Elise and senior purser Vivian. It also contains Vivian's conversation with Captain Harlan." Donovan clicked a button on his end. The audio began to play in the London War Room. "Who is currently in 1A?" Vivian's snobby recorded voice echoed clearly. "A Naomi Croft. Nobody I recognize. No corporate account attached. Just a standard first-class booking," Elise replied. "Bump her. Downgrade her to business or economy. I am not having Sterling Blackwell scream at me. Blackwell is a friend of the board. Move the Croft woman." The recording skipped forward to Vivian talking to Captain Harlan. "She was downgraded due to an operational necessity. She is refusing to sit in her assigned economy seat. I will call the Port Authority. They will drag you off my aircraft in handcuffs," Harlan's booming voice threatened. Donovan's eyes widened as the audio finished. "Naomi, this is a smoking gun. This proves premeditated fraud, breach of contract, and blatant discrimination to favor a wealthy and non-ticketed individual over a paying passenger. It destroys Sterling's PR spin entirely." "Don't just send it to the press, Donovan," Naomi commanded, her voice turning to steel. "Send it directly to the Civil Aviation Authority and the Federal Aviation Administration. Let them know we fired the crew to protect the passengers from illegal practices. Then post the raw audio file to Omnicorp's official corporate Twitter account. No caption, just the audio. Consider it done." Donovan smiled viciously. "Sterling's hedge fund is going to tank before you even touch down." "Let it burn," Naomi said, closing her laptop. By the time Flight 001 began its descent over Long Island, the corporate bloodbath was complete. Naomi's audio drop hit the internet like a tactical nuke. Within minutes of Omnicorp releasing the raw tapes, Edelman officially dropped Sterling as a client to save their own reputation. The narrative immediately flipped. Sterling was not a victim. He was an entitled conspirator who demanded paying passengers be thrown out of their seats for his comfort. The fallout was catastrophic for the former crew. The Civil Aviation Authority immediately announced a formal investigation into Captain Harlan's abuse of authority, effectively suspending his commercial license indefinitely. Vivian and Elise were completely unemployable in the luxury hospitality sector. Meanwhile, Omnicorp's stock did not just recover, it skyrocketed. Wall Street investors watched a 34-year-old black female CEO instantly identify operational rot, execute a flawless, zero-tolerance termination protocol, and transparently expose the corruption. They did not see an erratic leader. They saw a ruthless, hyper-efficient visionary who would not tolerate inefficiency or bad press. When the Boeing 777 touched down smoothly on the tarmac at John F. Kennedy International Airport and taxied to Terminal 4, Leela approached Naomi's suite. "Ms. Croft," Lila said, looking slightly nervous, "the Port Authority has informed us that there is a massive press gaggle waiting for you at the International Arrivals Gate. Do you want me to arrange a private tarmac exit? We can have a car pick you up directly from the plane." Naomi looked out the window at the sprawling New York skyline. She had built her empire in the shadows, letting her work speak for itself. But today, the shadows were no longer an option. The world needed to see exactly who was running the show. "No, Lila," Naomi said, picking up her scuffed leather briefcase and tossing her duffel bag over her shoulder. "I'll walk through the main terminal like everyone else." When the aircraft doors opened, Naomi walked out first. She did not change her clothes. She was still wearing the faded navy blue Yale hoodie, the Lululemon leggings, and the white sneakers. She walked down the long, sterile corridors of JFK, cleared customs with her diplomatic fast-track pass, and pushed through the frosted glass doors into the main arrivals hall. The explosion of camera flashes was blinding. Over 50 reporters, photographers, and independent journalists were crammed behind the velvet ropes. Microphones from CNN, Bloomberg, CNBC, and Fox Business were shoved in her direction. "Ms. Croft! Ms. Croft!" A reporter from Bloomberg shouted over the chaos. "Can you confirm the audio recordings? Did you really fire a veteran flight crew just minutes after acquiring the airline?" "Naomi, are you concerned about a lawsuit from Captain Harlan?" another yelled. Naomi stopped walking. The entire hall hushed, desperate to catch her first public words since the acquisition. She stepped up to the closest cluster of microphones. She did not look exhausted anymore. She looked like a conqueror standing on a freshly won battlefield. "I acquired Horizon Aviation because it was a failing company with beautiful assets," Naomi spoke, her voice calm, projecting effortlessly over the crowd. "But beautiful assets are worthless if the culture operating them is toxic. This morning, I experienced firsthand a corporate culture that believed dignity was a commodity that could be bought by the highest bidder, and that disrespect was acceptable if the target didn't wear a designer suit." She looked directly into the lens of the nearest television camera. "Let me be absolutely clear," Naomi continued. "Under the Omnicorp banner, wealth doesn't buy you the right to abuse people. A title doesn't give you immunity from consequences. We are in the business of logistics and hospitality, and any employee, from a gate agent up to a senior captain, who discriminates against a passenger will be terminated immediately. Protocol Zero is not a threat. It is our new standard operating procedure." A reporter from the Wall Street Journal pushed forward. "What about Sterling Blackwell? He claims he is taking his business elsewhere." Naomi offered a sharp, dismissive half-smile. "Sterling Blackwell is permanently banned from utilizing any Omnicorp or Horizon service globally. He isn't taking his business elsewhere. He is being escorted out of our sandbox. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a $4.2 billion integration to run." She did not take any more questions. Flanked by airport security, Naomi Croft walked out of Terminal 4 and stepped into the back of a waiting black SUV. As the car pulled away, merging onto the Van Wyck Expressway toward Manhattan, Naomi finally let out a long, quiet breath. She opened her phone. The Omnicorp stock was up by 14%. Horizon Aviation was officially hers, and the entire world knew exactly whose rules they were playing by. She leaned her head against the cool leather seat, closed her eyes, and smiled. If you loved this story of absolute corporate justice and watching toxic entitlement get completely dismantled, you are in the right place. Naomi's brilliant takeover proves that real power is not about throwing tantrums. It is about having the receipts and executing flawlessly. What would you have done if you were in Naomi's shoes on that jet bridge? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Don't forget to smash that like button, share this video with anyone who loves a savage revenge story, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible real-life storytelling. See you in the next one.